narrative. The fourth statement that I would like to pick up is, for love, no one should die. And the fifth, and we'll stop here and then, I'll pose the question, is that to make a choice to love, irrespective of your social status. Is love a choice, or does that, again, closing the loop, there is no reason for love? So I really want to actually ask our speakers, and anybody can go first, to from where you are, to reflect on these questions and talk about your trajectories, your journeys, as being certain kind of people who are negotiating across and within binaries and identities that label you as X religion, X caste, and even class and gender. Anybody can go first. Asif?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for giving this opportunity, and thanks for introducing me to so many people. First time to Pankaj and Kiran and so many other people. We also have some real-time survivors of this entire thing of love and all those things, which are part of this discussion today also. So first of all, today is a good day, very good day for those who believe in right to choose, because Delhi High Court has passed a direction today in which a same-sex couple has been allowed to stay in a safe house, which is provided by the government. So something to cheer about. And this is the first time, because till now there was no government safe house for same-sex couple. So this has happened. And yes, I mean, everybody has their trajectories, and they have a lot to share. This film is very powerful, and there were so many powerful statements in this film, dialogues in this film. I'm really, I watched it very carefully. Although I watched it once, please forgive me for my ignorance. I've not watched it earlier. But then, it was a good experience. And yes, I mean, it has raised so many issues, which, when we were discussing, Achal and I was discussing, and I thought it is something which is related to the overall social conditioning of a person, because wherever we see that, that conditioning comes into play, whether it is love, whether it is decision about education, job, or maybe same. So whatever was there, I personally feel that, we are so much into conditioning, and our society, our families are such that, we are not allowed to, take our decisions and take it forward. So I think it's a good reflection of all those, dilemma in every person's life. And it is talking about social issues, talking about civil rights and everything. So nice. Yeah, this is my sense of it. As somebody can else talk about, you want to share.
Asif, I think this is a good beginning, but I'm going to come back to you on some of the issues that have been raised, to reflect and maybe get some of the people from Dhanak and your own experience to share that. But we can have an initial response first for everyone. Aksha, would you like to go next?
Thanks for having me on this conversation today. So you mentioned about certain dialogues that were there, certain statements that were made in this film. And like, to be very honest, when I watched this movie last week, it was really impacting, and it brought back so many memories from the struggle that I had faced during the time when I was trying to get into an interfaith marriage. And also so many people who have shared their journeys while I'm connected through Dhanak, and they have those couples are part of Dhanak now, and they share their journeys. I could completely correlate their experiences they have faced. Like there are so many things that have happened to those couples, which are very nicely portrayed in the movie. And so that it's a very like I would say it's a very special movie that is worth the watch, and it really would be impactful for the society as a whole, especially for people who are not very sensitive about any of those issues that have been highlighted in the documentary as such. So people are most of the time oblivious to those things that are happening so casually on the name of religion, on the name of societal norms, and especially girls, they are being very nicely conditioned since their birth. I would say since a very young age of 2, 3 years, that this is how they have to grow up. They have certain boundaries. Everything is so nicely fed into our brains since the very beginning that it's very difficult for the girls to break those barriers and take a decision for themselves. Like they consider it to be a sin. So uh, that's that's what I would like I could correlate after watching the movie, and that's my view.
Akanksha, can I just, since you did mention that, there were in your journey where, you reflected from, so I just wanted to ask you to reflect on the whole question of love. How does love happen, and what is the negotiation that you actually did or do, if you'd like to share it, in terms between love and faith, you know, and institutionalizing in a relationship, because ultimately marriage is an institutionalization of love in some sort of in some way. Yeah, so if
So
you could sort
basically,
of reflect on it a bit.
yeah. So love and faith both are very personal things for an individual. When we take both of these to a platform where political influences are trying to influence it, or even the societal norms are trying to influence your decisions, irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your social status, irrespective of your economic status, irrespective of your educational status, then I think that is something where you are invading the privacy or a personal decision of an individual. That should never happen. Both are love, like who you can love and who you can marry, who you can like what faith you want to practice. That is something very personal for an individual. Even if I belong to a particular religion and still I don't want to follow certain practices of that particular religion, that is my own decision. But nobody condemns you in that way for doing that. But in case you want to get married to a person who is, or you are in a relationship with a person who is from a different caste or religion, then suddenly an outrage happens everywhere. So those, like I believe we need to try to minimize the invasion of privacy of other individuals, and bothering them or judging them. Not even bothering, we are no one to bother them. We should not even judge people who are making their own choices.
Thank you, Akanksha. Pankaj.
Um, um, it's very complex for me to, correlate this issue as a filmmaker, because you see, when I entered that space, when I entered the Indian Ostrom space, you know, uh, mm, my understanding or was very different. I was there to make a film, how Indian Ostrom was kind of negotiating with caste, in a play like Romeo and Juliet. That was my entry point. I had known them, but the play was developing. And for me, that is the exciting thing in a documentary form, that you are going as the play develops, and you enter that space, and you negotiate that space, and you interpret it in your own way. And very soon, I don't know what happened to me, and I think that's what worked in the film. I decided I had nothing to do with Romeo. personally, I said, I'm not attracted to him. I'm attracted to Juliet. And at that point of time, there were 4 girls who had just joined the group. And the way the group works, they were all kind of, rehearsing or improvising the role of Juliet. And when I was looking at those improvisations, I realized that, each one of them was going through or had her own notion of love, which they were trying to now step into the shoes of Juliet. And I said, oh my God, this is very interesting. And this is what I would like to focus. So I started with cast, but by the end of it, my focus throughout when I was shooting was on love. And if you look at the film, I focus more on love than on cast. I mean, if you see the way the film also ends, it ends on love. It has got nothing to do with, of course, it's an outcome of what happened because of caste politics. But yes, love became supreme. And for me, that negotiation, which I had to do very early while filming, was uh, was very interesting for me. Otherwise, I think in retrospect, it would have just become another critique of the caste system and the caste politics, which, I personally don't make those kind of films. So yes, love has no reason and love is supreme. And in fact, as Vallavan Kumaran, the director of the play, says, uh, love is a tool which can win over caste. And for me, that was very potent. Yeah.
Right. Right. Thank you. You actually answered the question I was going to ask, which was that, your role in the narrative as it unfolded. For those who don't know, which is not as in his bio, Pankaj as a kid, has been a theater person. And I think drama, sort of making drama happen. So, it is interesting how he juxtaposed theater, the stage and the screen. That sort of is in his blood somewhere, and it came across in the way this film actually unfolded. I'm going to go back to Asif, because Asif, I would like you to sort of introduce a little bit of Dhanak's sort of work and role, but not just in terms of as a practitioner, but also in terms of the understanding of the whole interfaith politics, and the interfaith personal journeys that people are experiencing, because this is really not something we talk about. The terms, the words we hear are honor cleaning. We hear those words, but we don't hear of the trials and the tribulations and the experiences that go on in that journey, which with the outcome of which is honor crimes. So I would like you to please take us through that, through Dhanak's experience, and feel free to invite some of the people who are here, you said, who are here. So, take it to a little to, really reflect on that, because that is really what we are here to discuss.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as Pankaj said, that it comes, it is coming naturally, and it is very nascent, because when you fell in love, it's a natural feeling. It's very natural, very emotional. It's a gift from God. It's a gift which is, I mean, we personally say that when we talk to couples that, you have been identified by the so-called Allah or Khuda or Bhagwan. You have been chosen. You are few chosen one. You are blessed with the feeling of love. So don't take it in that sense that, if I'm getting married to somebody of different faith, you're going against the religion. So it's very natural. And, when in this entire natural process, what happens, there are some instances like one of the couples, they were narrating me, they were telling me that what happened. So the female was Hindu and the male was Muslim. So she visited her, his ancestral home. And when she met his dadi, or somebody who was seen as dadi, or maybe father, sister, or somebody, so she immediately did like this, Salam Alaikum. So she folded her hands and she said, Salam Alaikum. So then, and suddenly she realized, oh, what I've done. So, but then, nobody said anything, but the message was communicated. So this is the, what I'm trying to say, the beauty of interfaith living and interfaith existence, where you cut across, that has been, and that should happen, because then only you question yourself, you question the entire concept of religion, the different, the philosophies of religion. Unless you you cut across this boundary of religion, that it has to be done in this way or that way. If you are falling in love, then you have to choose a partner from the same faith. It is not possible. And if you fall in love, then don't fall back in the same trap. Because what usually happens that, as long as love is there, certainly, nobody cares, and they are sailing very, very smoothly. But the moment there is a situation where they have to take a decision, and the family comes to know about it, then the entire thing of religion and family and society comes into play. And then it becomes that how are they going to get married? What will be the nature of marriage? How it will be blessed by the parents, because blessing from parents is very important in our culture. So, and it is before and after the marriage, because when you're trying to marry, because 90% of the couples who contact us, they say, please talk to our parents and try to convince them. And then even after getting married, they say that, we are in the process, we want them to reconcile with us, we want to restart our relationship. And that is the trap which we personally feel, that we tell couples that if you want to really make this relationship successful and happy, just try to keep a distance from your family for 1 year. Keep a distance doesn't mean that you don't talk to them. You talk to them, but don't let them own your marriage, because once they own it, it becomes religious. It will be seen in the religious color. They will try to, they will try to correct the marriage. जैसे कहते हैं ना, ठीक कर दी शादी हमने, ये बिगाड़ हो गया, हम उसको ठीक कर देंगे. So for them, it is either this way or that way. So that is the challenge which always exists in such couples, who either who manage to get married, or if they are in the process of convincing the parents. And and then if they are unable to do it, because in most of the cases they are unable to do it, they are not in the position even to have a dialogue on that. Because I mean, I remember my father saying me when I told him 21 years ago that there is a very if those people who understand that language, in Eastern UP language, that baap na mara mendki or londa tirandaj. Matlab, father has not even hurt a frog, and he has become a shooter, he has become an archer. So what are you talking about? So couple or individual, particularly female, they can't tell my father, mother that listen, I'm in love with this guy. So they have to leave that place. They are forced to leave. They have to run, and then they come to a different state, and whatever they have to, they run for their life. They want to stay together. No matter what happens, they want to stay together. They are least bothered that the marriage is solemnized in which form. They are ready to leave. They are ready to renounce their faith. They are ready to enter in the third faith if their marriage is recognized. So for them, faith, caste, region, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, because at that moment they want to be together. Like in this also, I can see one Suman and if they're still there. No, maybe because of the language.
Yeah, Suman is there. नहीं, Suman is there. हम लोग हिंदी में भी बोल सकते हैं. Suman है, Suman Raj.
सुमन है और उबैद हैं. तो अभी वो आए हैं यूपी से, और यूपी में नहीं कर सकते हैं, वो मुमकिन ही नहीं है. हमने कहा था कि आप क्यों नहीं करते हैं वहाँ पे, उन्होंने कहा नहीं, हम कर ही नहीं सकते. तो वो अभी आए हैं, पूरा सब छोड़ छाड़ के, प्रोटेक्शन और सब ले करके. तो वो जो पूरा जो कश्मकश है पूरी, है ना, सोसाइटी और फैमिली और जो आपका लॉ है, और उसके साथ आपका कहीं ना कहीं बहुत ही मासूम सा प्रेम है जो उनके साथ लड़ाई झगड़ा कर रहा है. तो वो एक बहुत बड़ी चुनौती होती है. जी.
So just to translate for one of some, what Asif is saying basically, that we have Suman and Ubaid here who, have left everything and come and trying to, sort of, their whole negotiation is with, the innocence of love. Suman, आप लोग कुछ कहना चाहेंगे अपने जर्नी के बारे में, अपने एक्सपीरियंस के बारे में?
मैम,
हाँ जी, बोलिए।
मैम, दरअसल हम दोनों एक दूसरे को 2.5 साल से जानते हैं। तो हमारे साथ मोस्टली ये होता है कि जब भी हम किसी को कहते हैं ना कि हम 2.5 साल से एक दूसरे को जानते हैं, तो वो हमको यही कहते हैं कि इतने कम टाइम में तुम दोनों एक दूसरे को कितना जान गए। तो वो मतलब हमारे दिमाग में डाउट क्रिएट करते हैं कि आप लोग का रिलेशनशिप इतना सीरियस नहीं है, आप फिर से सोच लो। एक होता है ना, एक हिंदू का एक मुस्लिम से शादी करने बहुत बड़ा इशू बना रखा है, और यूपी में तो खासकर होता है, एक हिंदू का एक मुस्लिम को प्यार करना वहां पे काफी बड़ी बात है। तो काफी ज्यादा दिक्कतें हुई हमें। पहले तो स्टार्टिंग में मुझे पूरा भरोसा था कि मेरे पापा मान जाएंगे, बाकी फैमिली मेंबर्स हो सकता है थोड़ा ना मान, बट एट द एंड हुआ ये कि बाकी फैमिली मेंबर्स को इतना इशू नहीं था जितना कि मेरे फादर को था। उनका यही था कि रिश्तेदारों को पता चल जाएगा, क्या कहेंगे, तुमने हमारा नाम खराब कर दिया, तुम हमारे लिए कलंक हो, बहुत सारी चीजें उन्होंने बोली। मुझे मारा पीटा भी, बट उन्होंने सिर्फ मुझे 2-3 दिन का टाइम दिया। मेरे पास कोई रास्ता नहीं छोड़ा कि मैं कुछ और करूं। जबकि जब हमारा रिलेशनशिप स्टार्ट हुआ था, हमने डिसाइड किया था कि बहुत सारे लोग घर छोड़ देते हैं शादी ब्याह के लिए, लेकिन हम ऐसा नहीं करेंगे। घर वाले जितना टाइम लेंगे हम देंगे, उनको हर तरीके से समझाने की कोशिश करेंगे, लेकिन हम ये काम नहीं करेंगे। लेकिन एट द एंड मेरे फादर ने हमारे पास ये काम करने के अलावा कोई और ऑप्शन ही नहीं छोड़ा, क्योंकि अगर हम शायद घर छोड़ के नहीं आए होते तो मेरे पापा ने मेरे लिए 2-3 रिश्ते देखे हुए थे दिल्ली, चंडीगढ़, वो कहीं ना कहीं शादी मेरी करा देता। तो अब हम दिल्ली आए हुए हैं और धनक एनजीओ की हेल्प ली हुई है, और अभी हम साथ हैं और काफी खुश हैं।
ग्रेट। आई थिंक
सुमन जो कह रही हैं, मुझे that also gives another aspect to the relationship where कुछ भी हो जाए हम माँ बाप को मनाएंगे और घर नहीं छोड़ेंगे। सिमिलरली कुछ भी हो जाए घर में पुलिस नहीं आनी चाहिए। तो these are certain values. I am not सुमन, मैं आपके लिए खास करके नहीं कह रहा हूँ, I am talking in general कि ये एक बहुत ऐसा एक ताना बाना है हमारी फैमिली में कि चाहे जो हो जाए पुलिस और थाना और कचहरी नहीं होना चाहिए। So we, one has to understand that, you are using law when you are forced to use the law in your protection. Otherwise, if you won't use it, then your family is going to use it against you. तो एक चीज ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है। और दूसरी चीज जो मुझे लगता है कि एक जो पूरी फिल्म में एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सा मुझे वो लगा, पंकज साहब, आपने जो रिक्शे में जो शादी करवाई, रिक्शे पे जो बैठे हुए थे, and they were taking around, and it was very interesting, and how इतनी सटल वे में आपने उसको कहा और इतनी महीन तरीके से आपने उसको समझ लिया कि why do we need any religious marriage? Why there should be recognition that now you have done a civil marriage? Why there should be a recognition where you go back to your family and the religious marriage should take place? Let's close it there only. So I mean that is the why there is that you want to satisfy your family, make them happy, because the moment you do that, then everything comes back कि अच्छा ठीक है, अब ये कर लिया तो अब ये करो, अब ये कर लिया तो ये करो. I mean it's a trap which is never going to end, and if you go satisfying them, then your marriage relationship is going to be doomed. तो वो बहुत खूबसूरत तरीके से आपने उसमें दर्शाया, बहुत अच्छा लगा।
थैंक यू सुमन, आपके थैंक यू, आपने जो शेयर करा, एंड आई थिंक समय 2.5 साल कुछ कम नहीं होता है। बिल्कुल भी इस ट्रैप में घुसना नहीं है, 1 सेकंड कम नहीं होता है। प्यार, इश्क, मोहब्बत
जहाँ मैं जॉब करती थी वहाँ मैंने अपने मैनेजर को बताया कि मेरे पापा ने मुझे मारा वारा है और शायद अब मैं ऑफिस नहीं आ पाऊंगी। तो उनको इस वक्त नहीं पता था कि मैं किसी मुस्लिम से प्यार करती हूँ, बस उन्हें पता था कि मैं एक लड़के से प्यार करती हूँ। बाद में उन्हें पता चला होगा, तो मैंने उनको फोन किया क्योंकि मुझे उस वक्त कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा था मैं क्या करूँ। मैंने उनको फोन किया, हमने कहा सर मुझे कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा मैं क्या करूँ। मुझे ये पता था कि उन्होंने लव मैरिज की हुई है, तो इसलिए मैंने उनसे पूछा कि सर मुझे इस सिचुएशन में क्या करना चाहिए। उन्होंने मुझे एडवाइस किया कि तुम जो कर रही हो, जो तुम्हारे फादर ने तुम्हारे साथ किया वो सही किया है, वो मारेंगे ही तुम्हें क्योंकि तुमने गलत किया है। क्योंकि एक मुस्लिम से शादी करना, तुम्हें पता है जमीन आसमान का फर्क है। कल को तुम्हें ले जाके बेच देगा, तुम क्या करोगी। तो ऐसे बहुत सारी चीजें उन्होंने मुझे बोली। फिर मैंने कहा ठीक है, हम देख लेंगे मुझे क्या करना है। तो ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग हैं हमारी सोसाइटी में जो आपको डिस्करेज करते हैं लव मैरिज करने के लिए। मैं मानती हूँ कि बहुत सारी गलत चीजें भी होती हैं। बहुत सारे लोग शादी करते हैं, छोड़ देते हैं, या उनका रिलीजन चेंज करते हैं, गलत काम कर रहे हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें होती है। लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं अगर 70% लोग गलत हैं तो 30% सही भी हैं। तो वो तो हमें खुद ही रीचेक करना होता है कि
सुमन बहुत
हाँ।
अच्छा पॉइंट रेज किया आपने इस पे।
Akanksha, can I just say when you're, because LF here will not understand Hindi, so a little bit of when you're speaking Hindi में भी बोलो और थोड़ा सा जो सुमन बोल रही है उसको English में translate कर दो. Just translate a bit of what she's saying so that LF gets a little bit of the content as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, like Suman was mentioning that she got various concerns raised from people around the society, like especially from the person she was working with, a colleague, a senior in her office, that she should not have done this. She should not fall in, like in the first place, she should not have fallen in love with a Muslim guy. And then he has also just tried to justify the actions of his father of hitting her, and it's a kind of domestic violence that she has faced if her father has hurt her. So if a person is trying to justify any kind of violence and is trying to dissuade her from taking her own decisions, so I think that is something really not acceptable. But one point I would like to make here is, whenever you go to people who have already done certain, like she mentioned, her senior has also gotten into a love marriage, not an arranged marriage. So we expect some kind of support from those people. But when we do not get that, it brings it gives us some stimulation that we need to think twice about our decision. That might be we are wrong, which is actually not the case. We should trust our instincts. We have fallen in love, and it was not something intentional we have done. Love can never be intentional. So it happened uh, suddenly. Like we didn't thought about that who we are falling in love with. Nobody can do that intentionally. That okay, this person is from my caste, is of the appropriate gender my parents would approve of, is of the same like the perfect gotra in which I can get married into, and is also on, like when all these factors match. I have seen so many love marriages not so many love affairs not getting converted into a marriage just because their economic status was not same. And to top it, worst of all, people say that okay, our daughter is a doctor. I don't want her to get married to a person from IT field, a person from any other field. I want her to get married to a doctor only. So parents can give you, or the society can give you n number of reasons to deny you getting married based on your choice. The problem is you making choices. So basically, the society and the parents, who are also part of that society, and they have to abide by the societal norms, they fear that once you start making decisions, once you start making choices on your own, and especially related to marriage, it will completely shatter this entire structure of caste and religion. If you will go out and start mingling with people of other caste and religions and other economic status, or basically you try to make your choice even of not getting married. Forget about getting married to a person. If you want to decide that I don't want to get married at all, but that is also something so big for the parents in society that they will never allow you to make that decision. So first thing is, we should ensure that our choices, if we are making a choice, we need to own our choice. whatever happens after that. If it was my decision, I need to make sure that my marriage works fine. If I have some trouble in my marriage because of any reason, it is my own responsibility to take care of it, to continue being in that marriage or to step out of it or do whatever. That is your decision. You should not go back to your parents or to the same people of society cribbing that I made a mistake, I got married to a person of different caste or religion, and that is the reason this happened. Because 99% cases, religion is not at all a matter that could impact your marriage and lead to a divorce or lead to a shattered marriage. It never happens. Like we have met so many couples who are part of Dhanak, and also around the society as a whole. They can be part of arranged marriages, love marriages, interfaith marriages, or any other kind of associations. Not even marriages. They are live-in partners and all. But still, the reason of any kind of arguments between them, any kind of fights or anything leading even to divorce, is never religion or caste. Every marriage has their own issues. Any marriage survives with the mutual trust and respect. If that is missing, there would be issues. If there is lack of understanding, there might be some issues. You have to deal with those issues in a different way, but it has nothing to do with religion. So that is something we should understand very well.
Thank you, Aksha. I want to just open this out to some of the people we have here, some of the participants we have here. I'm assuming some of you who are here, or all of you who are here, have seen the film. So I would, invite you to. You can pose a question to Pankaj. You can pose a question to Asif or Akanksha, or you can also just reflect on talking about in terms of interfaith, intercaste relationships and the journeys, particularly from the perspective of, becoming a society which is free and fair, becoming a society where we are there as support groups, as individuals, not just as one organization, but all of us. How do we actually become support groups, support communities? Because I think, to me, the fact that this discussion is part of Truth and Reconciliation Weekend is a very interesting juxtaposition of our realities. What do we define as truth and what are we reconciling? And who's defining those for us, those truths for us? So please, anybody can, unmute yourself and share or ask a question or make a comment if you like.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the movie, but the topic, when I saw the caption of the topic, it really interested me, and I'm also very curious about how these kind of topics are tackled in different cultures and societies. I believe in the power of movies, so congratulations for the movie. I think that's a brilliant idea, because all these kind of separation systems are inflicted in our subconscious through images, through what we have seen. And it's quite difficult to untangle what is culturally inherited to us, but I believe in the power of the stories, ordinary people's stories. It doesn't have to be like a celebrity or something, but it will really touch the heart, because, I mean, we see separation, but just the stories are different, emotions are the same. And also image, we record in our subconscious, everything gets recorded as an image. So I believe in the power of the images. And unfortunately, the history is written by the victors of the time after the World War. Majority of the history that has been inflicted and injected on us is also the pictures and movies repetitively, which has been shown, and we are all brainwashed. I mean, today the discussion is in India, but I see this problem interfaith, social, even social status. Like, for example, in Turkey, I know that in Istanbul, for example, if you go to Istanbul, in the same neighborhood, you can experience 7 different lifestyles. One can be academic, one can be rich, one can be very poor. But then if the children of this society goes to the same public primary school, they all blend in that school, but not really. There is automatically a caste system created. But then why do we have these? I think because of the imagery. So I really would like to congratulate you, although I didn't watch the movie, because I feel like we can change the future by image, and I believe in the power of the people like us coming together, speaking and creating visual documentary for the future to rewrite the subconscious. I just wanted to reflect on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have put the link of the film on the chat, so you could copy it and watch it. It's available till Sunday. Anybody else would like to speak? I know we have Bindu here, we have Bharti here, we have Shubhi, Rahul, Praveen, Kiran, and the team at TRW. Anybody else who would like to reflect on the film and the topics? Otherwise, I will go ahead. I mean, and of course, I'll go ahead accordingly then. Okay, we have Varsha as well who has joined. Yes.
Ma'am, thank you for this conversation. I would like to start from the first beginning shot. That it was so beautifully captured, and it was saying like, "Come, come! I just want to show the magic." And that, I mean, what I got it like when he was saying like, okay, this is a power of love, and come, just watch the entire scene, and when it's going to end, there's a dialogue Juliet said about freedom of love, and that was so powerful, and I got the sense that society or men won't live peacefully if they don't talk about equality, and that was so deep. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Are you thinking of something else, Rahul?
Yeah, I would like to add.
Yes, please.
And first, I was confused about the beginning part, but later on, I got the sense that yeah, it was beautifully written and directed by sir. So I would just want to ask from sir that what about the idea of that two mannequins like the dolls, Juliet and Romeo and Juliet. So what about that idea? I mean, they were very beautifully. If I talk about their clothes and their makeup, and so yeah, I didn't get.
Can somebody reframe that question?
Pankaj, he's asking how did you how did you use the whole mannequins? What did they symbolize? The mannequins, the puppets,
I just want to clarify something. My film is a kind of an interpretation of what the theater group Indian Nostrum was doing. Now, their production of Chandala is actually a 4-hour-long production, which is an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet into a Tamil setting. I was interpreting what they were doing. So for them, these puppets were actually used as props. You know, these
Yeah,
puppets are used in different ways for, and the 4-hour play is full of song and dance sequences, you know, because it is a huge takeoff on cinema as well, you know. But from I gave the puppets a certain kind of uh, flesh and blood, you know. So while I was editing, I saw to it that Romeo and Juliet are represented by these puppets. Okay, so I, when I was editing, I pushed that narrative. It is not there in the original play. It's my interpretation, you know, which I brought while I was editing this documentary, you know. So I use the puppets in a different way than what was actually planned. In fact, a lot of these elements, let me tell you, I mean, I've done this throughout the film. Like, you know, this character whom you see in the beginning of the play, you know, who says love, 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 Cupid, you know. Now that was one thing which the group brought into the production. You know, they said we need a god of love, we want to celebrate love. It's not there in the original Romeo and Juliet text. And Juliet, which is there in the film, which on the rickshaw scene, and also in the end, you know, where she actually reads out Neruda, Jack, I'll bring you from the mountains and kisses and this, Jack, I love you. Now in the play, it was actually the lines to given to the god of love, and I decided, no, my interpretation is that the lover should be saying all this in my film, you know. So that's why I gave it to Juliet. So that way, a lot of these things has been done by me throughout the film, you know, to push this idea of love, you know. I hope I've answered your question.
yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank
The
you.
rickshaw scene was when I saw that, it was like, oh,
Well,
oh,
the
it's beautiful.
rickshaw scene is originally, yeah, the rickshaw scene is actually part of the production. It's part of the play. In fact, you'll be surprised, you know, the group actually dismantled the rickshaw in 7 parts and took it to Paris where they were performing. You know, so I mean, these are the kind of wild things the group does, you know. It's based on completely an improvisation. So I remember this was the first scene which I shot with the group, you know. I was when I started my shoot, the group was trying to improvise how Romeo and Juliet will get married. So, you know, so they broke into 3-4 groups amongst themselves and were planning. And one of the actors actually suddenly said, he brought in a rickshaw into the theater, and these 4 people got onto the rickshaw. And that's play, you know. And I like that image, so I of course used it in my film, you know, as part of that. Yeah, but it's in the play, it is the way it is, what we see. Yeah, they actually get
Thank
married
you.
on the rickshaw. The entire
And
Thank
cast
you.
sits on it.
and
Yeah.
the guy who was handling the rickshaw was looking like someone, a friend.
He's the god of love, Cupid. In the play, he is the god of love, Cupid, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, so that was the idea. That was the idea. And I think that rickshaw scene, you know, it has a you know, it's beautiful, because what it is talking about, it's talking about not just 2 people getting married. It's talking about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, the entire world coming onto the rickshaw. What is the rickshaw? What is one thing? So the fact that, you know, love can flourish on a rickshaw and can take it to some other plateau. I think that scene is just too good.
But why rickshaw,
For the
sir?
play. And
They,
of course, I think, as I said, you know, yeah, yes, Anchal, I think we'd like to.
Sorry, Rahul, I think I'd like to, I think I'd like to take the conversation back beyond the
Yeah.
to the sort of, to having a little more discussion, and maybe you can come back again, Rahul.
yeah, sure.
So I wanted to go back to Asif and Akanksha and even the others who are here by asking posing this comment that we are very comfortable with binaries, right? We seem very comfortable with binaries. And when it comes to disruptions of those binaries, we get very uncomfortable. And do we just, you said earlier initially you talked about social conditioning, but in the movie, the director also says, you don't explain caste to a child. The child will not understand caste, right? So
Yeah.
I just want, with your experience at Dhanak and with the kind of, experiences that you have, and even some of the other people who are here who are, in these kind of in relationships which are inter all kinds, how do you deal with disruptions when it comes to love? That is one. The second is, how is caste different from religion? Where does class come in all this? How does class permeate these status, your caste status and your religious status? And also, how does it juxtapose itself when we are looking at different genders? So I'm making it a little complex, but I'm trying to create the web for us to really reflect on the fact that there is so much. It is a web, but how do we actually deal with these disruptions when it comes to love? Because I think love is primary. Marriage is just an outcome and I think more and more live-in and those other kinds of partnerships are getting thing. But I don't want to get fixated on marriage. I'd rather stay fixated on love.
So Achal, when two people want something like their relationship to work out, any sort of disruptions, any sort of new things that may come up are very easily sorted out. They devise a new path in which both are it's a mutual understanding of both the parties who are part of that relationship, and they work it out and sort out a new way to go through it. There are so many things that happen naturally as part of our society. Like a girl is expected to change her surname after getting married, but there are so many scenarios where these days girls don't want to do that. So if the two people who are part of a relationship, they are okay with that, it will never cause a problem. It is never a problem with the documentation or visas or passports or any other thing. It is just how the society wants you to be. For example, whenever you go to any government office or banks or anything, automatically a female, they call that female from the surname of her husband, like Mrs. So and so. So basically, when you try to challenge those, you will see those smirks. Like people do give you that questioning looks and that kind of stuff. But if you two are okay with it, you will devise a way to get out of it. So that's a very small instance. But there are major questions also when it comes about what would be the religion of child, or what would be the religion or caste of child, and what kind of things you will teach about religion to that child. So I think those things are sorted when you both are on the same page. We celebrate all the festivals in our home. We celebrate the festivals of both the religions very comfortably. We participate and we try to enjoy a lot. So basically, our festivals have doubled after getting married. After being into an interfaith marriage, we get double the holidays because we take holidays on festivals where earlier we were not taking those. So it's much more fun. And I think for a child, again, it's a very different thing. Like they see the family going in that way. They see that these things are very normal in our family, and they get used to it. They don't question much about it. So similarly, all such disruptions can be handled if those two people are okay with it. If you two are not confident about taking it further, then you can pinpoint each and every small thing that will bother you about caste or religion or anything.
Thank you, Akanksha. I'm not going to say anything to that because I think let others also speak about their take on this. Asif, if you want to, anybody else as well.
No. It's basically what Elif, if I'm pronouncing it correct, she is also writing that there is a complete industry and there is a hegemony of caste and religion. The system is maintained because it has to work. The power dynamics has to work. So and then it is how right from the beginning it is brought in our mind that you are different, your practices are different. So that that remains in the mind because it is years and years of conditioning. It is not only limited to us, it has been coming from our forefathers and parents and everybody. So then we when we bring this whole, as long as Akanksha says that the couple, whether they are married or unmarried, they are left alone to decide about themselves. They will devise a way, they will find out a new way, new system, new form of reaching out to their god or whatever. But it is generally it gets challenged from the families, initially from the families and the society. So, and then if you are not very particular about, if you are particular about the practices, then it becomes an issue because unfortunately this caste and religion is so deep rooted in our mind. It's so much in our mind that somehow it gets reflected. So one has to find out their own way of dealing with it and how to distance yourself from all those understanding about the faith and caste and which has existed earlier. So it is certainly a challenge. And you also need, as you know, you need a fraternity. You need those people who have lived this life. When people look at you or look at other people who have lived this life, so it's always is easy for them, of course. And how it works, because the entire caste system and family and religion, it works as a support system for those people who are in the conventional form of marriage. Whereas those who are challenging it, going against it, there is nobody. From both the faith, both the caste, there are nobody. There's nobody. So they have to find their own fraternity, own people. They know that if something goes wrong, there should be fallback system where somebody. So these are the challenges. And yes, I mean, the beauty of it is that you love in your own way. You devise your own mechanism. And that is how you, because people will be, there will be curiosity, of course. Leave parents aside, they, neighbors. I remember my neighbors coming to my house initially, in initial years of my marriage, coming and just having a look around at how the things are. Is there any god and goddesses are there? Is there any idol kept there? Is there Makkah Madina pasted on the wall? So they want to gauge, they want to see that how you are living. And if you are comfortable with it, then I don't think that's an issue. And as far as caste and religion is concerned, as you raised this question also, we have seen that, basically caste thing, somehow it doesn't remain that superficial aspect as interfaith religion or interfaith marriage faces. Because in interfaith, faith is an identity. Faith is your appearance, your practice, your name. Whereas in intercaste, it is even name and practices are almost common. So then there is no question from immediate neighbor or somebody that, unless they probe deep into that, okay, what is your caste, what is your background and all those things. So usually, I'm not saying that there is no struggle in intercaste, because intercaste, as we have seen what happens, entire community is subjugated to violence, and they face a lot of things, which has been depicted in this also, in this film also. But then it generally, the couple, they find a way of living because there is not too much of probing from the surrounding, from the neighbors. Whereas in interfaith, it is name itself suggests, you have to, your practices, your belief, because somehow if you believe in that, you are practicing, and if you are practicing, then it is again a question. So it becomes challenging. And that's why, interfaith issue, interfaith marriage is such a big challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted, I would like, Pankaj, if you would like to reflect, or anybody else, to reflect also on gender and class in this whole, canvas.
No, I just want to add on to what Asif is saying. Well, when we're talking about binaries, we also have to understand that these binaries they are not just there in our families. They are there. They exist in all structures. For example, I would say these binaries exist when you go to the cop station. They will look at you with a certain lens depending on what faith/caste you belong to. And I would say, go to the extent it goes to the judiciary also. Look exactly what happened in the Sankar Kaushalya case. The lower court passed an order saying ki, okay, the father and those six people were given death sentence. And there was a huge hue and cry after that sentence was done, because Kausalya challenged that order, because she said, my mother is equally complicit in the crime. She should also be punished. Anyway, the case had to move to the higher thing. And in the High Court, in the Madurai High Court, which is the bench of the Chennai Madras High Court, the decision was reversed. The court came down heavily and said, sorry, we do not have enough evidence that the father was part of this entire crime. He was let loose. See, one can get into judicial things and figure out this, but I see a very clear-cut, a kind of a bias happening, over there as well. So when we're talking about these binaries, they are not just existing in our families; they are there in our system. They are there by every possible authority which surrounds us. And it is practiced in a most awkward way when it comes. Yeah.
Sure. I think I'd like to add to how patriarchy also manifests in actually playing up all these vulnerabilities and, sort of aggravating some of these issues. Because definitely, this is a question, I remember in the field, we often face this, and in the film also we have faced this. If which gender, which caste does which gender belong to? That is one sort of peg. Which caste does a particular gender person belong to, even in that inter-caste, interfaith relationship? Because while Akanksha, you said what is right is that individuals deal with it, but the reality, it is contextualized in the social structure, right? So actually, we see a lot of, I'm sure Dhanak has experiences of this kind, where you have all these different tags to individuals coming in an interfaith relationship, which change the dynamic. Like in the film, the dynamic is the story is the dynamic. The dynamics create the story. How does running away for a man work? Does it work better for a man? Does it work less for a woman? Does it work for you and me, but doesn't work for Jack? I think we need to, to kind of take this discussion into a level where we are also impacting social change or the social structure. We do need to take it beyond individual lives and these negotiations that we are managing to do, to actually questioning the superstructure and actually looking at it all there. Because, for instance, in the film, caste as labor, labor as caste comes in critically. He dons the mask of a god, and that day his caste doesn't matter. So I think we need to reflect on these beyond the individual space as well. Sorry, I need to drink some water.
Yeah.
But he can.
No, so what you are raising and what you missed is basically what you're talking about, gender and the class system in this. Yes, it is very important when we are very careful when we get a case where the girl is from a upper caste Hindu community. It is very, very clear that, when we know, and that too from those states which are UP, MP, we know that they have a state law against it. So the first thing is we ask that, okay, which is the girl is from which community, and we know that, if she's from a Brahman or Rajput family, then we have to be very careful and very prompt in our action. We can't take it lightly. Whereas where we come across a case where the girl is a Muslim and a boy is a Hindu, then we tell them, okay, you don't get, the couple also, that don't get worried, because here you are doing ghar wapsi, you know and it's not going to be that difficult for you, because no, the parents of girl, they don't have that political support or political backup. So and they generally, it is not that easy for them. So yes, it is very important that girl is from which class, which caste, or which religion. Similarly, class is concerned, to my understanding, in mixed marriage, it has very little role to play, because caste and religion is so important. It is so important that no matter how beautifully or well placed the boy is, because generally the marriage is, the boy is earning and he has a good job or whatever, it is not entity. The the you know that the symbol of the religion and the caste is so important. So at times, parents, they become very very thoughtful in stopping, and they say, okay, if the boy was in a government job, then we would have considered it, or the boy was an IAS, we would have considered, and the couple fell prey to it. So I mean, we tell them it is not going to work. Even if you get a government job, they are not going to allow you. So class, I personally feel, when in a region, in a country where religion and caste is so important, particularly in marriage, I have not, I mean, this to my experience, otherwise people might have a different experience. To my experience, this is almost negligible, that which class you belong to.
You, Asif. That is, I think that's such an important reflection. I really wanted to hear that, because I think that comes from your experience and your, all the support work that you're doing at Dhanak, to have that reflection come in. I just want to go back to the participants. If there's anybody who wants to ask a question or share a reflection or make a comment. Okay. I mean, this is a safe space. I know it is getting recorded, but it is a safe space if people want to share something or say something particularly. Yes.
I would like to just kind of ask a question to Asif and
Yes.
the kind of work they're doing. Over these years, the number of cases you've dealt with, and I'm sure you've been a privy to a lot of personal details and families and whatever. As a human being, where do you think reconciliation lies? What would be the route for reconciliation in these situations?
Yeah, if I got it correct, you are asking that reconciliation between the families.
Well, reconciliation in general, yeah, definitely, for the families to understand what the lovers are doing, and vice versa also. And what would be, what has been your observation? Where is the reconciliation finally?
It's very difficult, because generally the families are ready to accept the relationship, because it's a fait accompli for them. But then they always have that, at the back of their mind, that the other person, their sister, the daughter-in-law or son-in-law, is from different faith. And it is also very important if they are, still carrying their values, because if they're not compromising on the suggestions being given by the parents, because to their understanding, the marriage has to be either this or that. It cannot be both things. It cannot be, you cannot have both the faiths or multiple faiths. You cannot have that. So reconciliation, we have seen families coming together, sitting together, having dinner or lunch together, or meeting at the house of their children. But it doesn't go much beyond, because there are very few topics to discuss, because generally, you know, the discussion is based on the families, the village, the caste, the politics. The moment you enter the politics and all this discussion, it again becomes very difficult. So reconciliation, the only thing is that, you know, these families are living this relationship, those couple who are living this relationship, and somehow they become very careful while making a loose comment, which generally used to happen when they know that, you know, their daughter-in-law or son-in-law is from different faith, which usually, you know, when you're sitting with people of your own fraternity and you make, oh, these Hindus are of such background or Muslims are of, so that stops. They become sensitive on that, at least whenever they are around. But then whether it is going to change the scenario, whether it is, the only thing is that they can only, they used to say that, you know, what can we do? I mean, they are adults, they have taken their decision. But there is no sense of pride in that. You know, they would not, there are very few cases, you know, one case which has come in right now in Pune or somewhere, where the parents they're forced to withdraw in the public gathering and all those things. There are very few cases where parents give them, you know, the card and they invite people for celebration. Otherwise, it is a personal affair where either those children who got married, they do throw a party, or they try to keep it to themselves. I don't see, I mean, I don't know what Akanksha has to say on that, or others has to say on that. Akanksha, is there a point of reconciliation?
Reconciliation, like you said correctly, that there is never that sense of pride. They will try to hide it as much as possible from the people who don't know it, even after 5, 6, 7, or 10 years. But yeah, but still, when they see you happy, they come around. But it is only just for the sake that you are their children, and they, like, it has happened and they cannot do anything about it now. It is just about that. It has nothing to do with any other thing. Like, they, even if you are very, very well accomplished, and you are doing very good in your job, and you are doing very good as a couple also, your relationship is strong, and they see that you are happy, but still that something is missing every time. Like, you can't get that 100% happiness out of it.
Thank you,
Well,
Akanksha.
there are cases where, you know, the couple have done a civil marriage, and they have booked a, you know, place for destination wedding, where they have invited the parents. Okay, we are doing the marriage as per the religious rituals. Please be part of it. We are inviting all friends and everybody. But it doesn't happen. Parents, they keep a distance. They keep a safe distance. And yes, I mean, over a period they are okay with it. They accept it, but then they are not happy about it. Somewhere back of the mind that, you know, my bahu or my damad is from different faith.
And
That's
be
simple.
it whatever number of years, they will try to bring they want to bring their child back to where it all started. They would try to give you certain cues that, okay, now this much time has passed. Now at least you can start doing this. Like, for example, if a girl is Hindu and she's married to a Muslim, they will very politely they will suggest, okay, let's do this thing. Like, you can start offering namaz, or if the girl families might suggest that, okay, we can ask the son-in-law to be part of certain puja. So that those little things will keep on happening based on the different phases of your life. But so basically they would want both of you to be on the same religious platform one day or the other. But so that thing never goes.
Fair enough. Elif, you had a question? Please.
I mean, I have a philosophical question. I just want to ask the group, but it doesn't need to be answered. It may be too philosophical. We are talking about currently, we are taking the photograph of today, and we are looking at how marriage is interpreted, and we are talking about love. I'm curious, is there anyone who has explored here why, forget about our nationalities, genders, forget about everything. Imagine that we are childlike. Why would one want to get married? I feel like there is a different, deeper meaning behind marriage, but then I feel like across the generations it has been diluted, and today there is a malpractice, and we are talking about institutionalization of love. When something is institutionalized, there is no, I think, spirit in it. So what happens? And I don't know, is there someone who has thought about it? Why would we like to get married as a human?
Okay, I have an answer to that, but I'm going to let somebody else speak first. Anybody who hasn't spoken would like to talk about this? People who are married, not married, thinking they might get married, young people. Should I call out Shubhi just because she's a young volunteer with me? Kind of push her to reflect on it. Hey, Shubhi?
I thought you will say my name. So yeah, actually, I am a 24-year-old girl who's married, and I was listening to all of you. Also married to, I'm a Jain, half Sindhi, married to a Bengali. So there are all kinds of things running into this small family of us. So the question that why I wanted to get married, it came because there's only me and my mom in the family. So both of us, we always had that notion between us that let's, something, so that no longer she is tensed about me. Her perspective that, okay, the daughter is now well settled. And it actually kind of worked for us also, because after me getting married, now I can see her pursuing, dance classes she's going to, mandala art she's learning, and all that stuff. So yeah, from my perspective, I was also kind of relieved, and yeah, I did a love marriage, so everything is very good. So it is win-win for both of us.
I think the word that comes across to me when Shubhi says this is the question of security, a kind of a patriarchal security that gets established in society. I'm conceptualizing it, I'm taking it in the same level as Alif you asked, a philosophical level. I think the other point that comes across to me is the whole question of convenience. Convenience of being married. So no questions asked, no disruptions. You are in a relationship, you are in love, but you are institutionalized, because everything institutionalized is accepted and it's all hunky-dory. And this is not personalizing one person, this is just taking it away from there. Anybody else? And then, maybe some other points come across from there. Some of you here are married, some of you have been married, some of you are just married, कुछ लोग अभी शादी किए हैं. So yeah, क्यों marriage, शादी क्यों करना जरूरी है? शादी के मायने क्या है?
Can I answer?
Yes.
Actually, what you said, that, sense of security, because in mixed marriage, particularly when it is intercaste, interfaith, or even if it is not interfaith or interfaith, basically, society accepts it with that form only. As you said, that, that is how the society, they are not going to accept a relationship where they want to define it. And the definition of this relationship is a marriage. And so far, you also, we have also cases which I discussed with same-sex couple, that why are you pushing for marriage? Why do you want this marriage to come in this institution of marriage? But then again, the same system and the legalities of it, whether it is adoption, whether it is property, whether it is maintenance, everything is linked with that. So, and acceptance also, because if you are dealing with authority, with the police or with the judiciary or whatever, it is very easy for them to, you know, okay, you are married, then give a certificate, we will handle it. But if you are not married, then the first thing which they will do, you are not married, okay, go to your family, go back to your family, girl will go back to her father's family. And if she's so adamant not to go, then she will go to a shelter home, women's shelter home. So that is why, I mean, there is an importance of marriage, particularly those couple and those people who are approaching us. We know that marriage has its own problems, and you know, we all know that how difficult. After 10 years we say, oh yaar, kya kiya, kyun kiya, you know. So then that is the, I think that is the biggest reason, that everything is being governed by law, and it gives that particular kind of security to the girl, to the female, or not to the girl particularly who is in the weaker side, whether boy or female. Then usually it is for female. So that gives them security and also acceptance. That is the reason. And people are living without marriage, yes, but then that level of maturity should be there. There should not be any fear of losing something. You know, both should be financially independent, and they should own the, you know, the decision, because it's very difficult. Very few people are in that position to live in that situation. So we wish that, you know, we can challenge that, because we know that institution of marriage has its own problems. But till now, I mean, this is only till now, mostly people prefer that.
So can we say that the caste system, the marriage that we are talking about, the current interpretation of marriage, is just maybe an extension of patriarchy, and if patriarchy just demolishes and we have governments, maybe a world government even we are talking about, are supporting individuals' rights, and we come together as communities through individualities, maybe these problems will, I don't know, just disappear, and there will be disruption maybe. Can we say something like that? Because what I hear is, it's like patriarchal system. This is like, we're talking about a system which is patriarchal, which is created to support the continuation of generations, but then there's a fear element, you know, to be protected and not feeling safe if you get out of that system. So maybe this is a systematic disruption topic.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, to me, the other things that come in mind often when we talk about marriage is the whole concept of marriage kind of makes reproduction possible. It legitimizes reproduction. Okay. It basically, and the question I often have with a lot of young people with me is, why do you need to have children? So, you know, then we get into a totally different discussion there. But the other question that we often discuss is that marriage actually in some ways controls sexuality, and particularly of the woman. And so while for the man, it is convenient to be in the marriage, because no questions asked on the sexuality. Then there can be things happening outside of the marriage, but within the marriage, it's all controlled. It's all controlled. So the superstructure and the substructure is patriarchy to me.
Yeah. It feels,
you know,
so.
It is definitely that. And I think it kind of, you know, you in every form you will have single or marital status. You never have, there is marital status is something that, and everybody will look at you, you know, and sort of, you know, what are you taking there? That is always a question. So I think for love, marriage is not necessary. For marriage, love may be necessary.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that it comes across in Janani's. You know, she says, and I actually have this written, if we touch, will love come? Will love come after marriage? Will it come after the first night? What if I don't feel love in marriage? I mean, she says this, you know.
Yeah.
You have to see the film, Alif. You have to see it because
I will. I copied the link. I will.
yeah,
watch it.
and I think for everyone, I mean, what comes first? Does love come first or does marriage come after? That's the question to discuss. And then again, you know, Jesse, you know, like everybody here has experienced, you know, I think there is no reason to love. For love, there is just love. I think we can go on, but I would leave any last comments to anybody who is here, speakers, participants, and on the question of love and celebrating love, but also disrupting the social structure. I didn't take on the conversation into the Uniform Civil Code, but I do want to say that is something that has again recurred in our country. We are starting to talk about that again. We don't know if it is again a political peg. It may be, but it is something that we have to keep working about and keep talking about because it is definitely an arena where law then governs how love happens or doesn't, or how love gets institutionalized or doesn't. So over to all of you for any last words. Pankaj?
Nothing. I think love is it. Love is supreme, and it doesn't matter what form it takes. It can take the form of marriage. It may not take the form of marriage. It's absolutely fine. But love has to be there. I mean, let's just understand that love has to be there. Yeah.
Akanksha? Yeah.
So rightly said, Achal, like when you mentioned that all the women have that question that whether love would come after marriage or not. That was such a big thing. Even when I was thinking if I will get into an arranged marriage, if it doesn't come, what would happen? So you can't be trapped in your entire life without love. Love is something like it's a basic necessity of life, I would say. It's very important to survive. It should be there, and nobody should be fearful of falling into love. That's the only fall everybody deserves.
That's a good one. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Anybody else here? Asif? The young...
No, everybody should. I mean, I personally feel that this is a very, very, very interesting and very, very powerful feeling one should have. And nobody should remain untouched with that. So this is an experience. It's very, very, enriching experience to anybody, whether they get married or they remain whatever maiden or bachelor. But it is a very, very good experience as an experience.
Okay, so on that note, before Shakespeare turns in his grave even more for disrupting Romeo and Juliet and with Janani's Juliet, to kind of, I want to congratulate Dhanak for the work you're doing. I think we really need to, I mean, I'm sure you have a great reach, but this is another platform whereby it's great to reconnect and, really sort of share some of your work and experiences, because it's a very important space you have creating and has so much potential. सुमन जी, आप लोगों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आप ज्वाइन करें. सॉरी इंग्लिश में काफी था, बट मैं होप कर रही हूँ आसिफ और आकांक्षा थोड़ा बहुत डिस्कशन आपके साथ और कर पाएंगे. Everybody else who's been here, thank you for being with us. If you haven't watched the film, the link of the film is in the chat box. I'll put it again. And thank you to the TRW team for hosting this event and to celebrating love, to celebrating the honesty with which we love, we care, we give, whether it is into anything. And kudos to everyone who's making that happen, but not just in the individual, but also in the community. Thank you once again. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.